Do you see this? Yes, this. This is Sony's 65-inch OLED flagship TV, the A1. But this video is also my very first TV review. And my biggest issue for right now is actually keeping it down under 30 minutes, which is very hard for me for one main reason. If you are thinking about buying a TV like this for roughly $3,500 or 3,000 euros, you should be well informed. Just 5-minute review, in my opinion, just doesn't cut it. But since, like all my reviews also, this is done in one take, a few things might happen like they aren't really planned to happen. But we will see about that. I hope it will be entertaining. But since this is so much information, and at some point it will be a little bit dry, I will give you a little bit of a shorter summary at the end, because it will be quite hard to keep track of all the things, since I'm not just planning to review this, but I also want to give you all the information that I would personally like to have, all the information that I think you should have, but also give you some extra tips and tricks of my experience of using this about 4 weeks, because quite a few things came up and you should be aware of these. And the main reason why I'm actually starting TV reviews with the pretty much most expensive, or let's say at least flagship level TV from Sony, is one reason. I want to know what's pretty much best at the very top. And then, for all those people who don't want to have the best, but want to know, for example, if I pay 1,500, if I pay 50% of this, how much percentage-wise roughly do I get? Because why not just pay 50% and get 80% of this one? What I also want to do is review their flagship LCD, because this one is the top end or the other end of the spectrum, since OLED has some advantages but also some disadvantages. And you can maybe already see some of them, because you should be able to see in the reflection actually my TV chair. Don't bother too much, this is just because of all the lighting here and all the reflections. I have to say though, since this is an OLED TV, which just in general isn't as bright as an LCD, for some people, maybe in more dedicated living rooms, it could be an issue. So if you need something super bright, especially for HDR in a bright environment, I will let you know in that review what are the specific advantages and disadvantages also on the other side for the LCD. Today I'm going all OLED, and what I've noticed is that if you have a window on the other side, so facing this one, it definitely is already becoming an issue. Now you see it more than normally, because I had to turn down the brightness to about 18 out of 50 to not to make it too bright for you to see everything. That's why you see so many reflections. A window facing the TV definitely is an issue, because you will see reflections. From the sides, not so much, so you should at least keep the blinds down, but that's so much about that. And now I want to actually already start with the design. And the one thing that you've maybe already noticed is that there is no stand. Because the way this works, and I think this is the only TV that I've seen so far, is where the bottom actually sits flush with the desk or whatever you have it standing on, the rack. And this is done via a foot that flips out. And I've always thought, how would this be stable enough not to flip over? Well, there is a weight which you need to screw with 2 screws, which aren't actually included. And the manual even says that. For this price, I definitely think they should have been included. But this holds it absolutely secure and stable. And if you see it moving now, this is not the TV moving, it's actually already the rack. So don't bother about this. And what this foot, or this kind of fold-out foot, also includes is the already included subwoofer. And if you have it now on your desk, you will get the sound reflect from your wall, which is good. And if you have it mounted to your wall, which is something that I definitely would have to do if I want to keep reviewing TVs, because I can't just move my own every time. So I would mount it to the wall, and then the TV, even though it's like maybe 5-6 millimeters thick, it stands about 6 centimeters, 7 centimeters, maybe 8 at best, away from the wall, because it needs some breathing room and also for the subwoofer. The TV on its own is quite thin though. And if you're already asking yourself, since there is a woofer on the back, but we don't have space for speakers, where are those? You are actually already looking at them the whole time. Because what this TV uses is a sort of technique where it makes the display vibrate, and vibration turns air into sound waves, which gives you sound. So the whole display is the speaker. The good thing of that is that the sound comes straight out from the TV, which definitely is a nice experience, but I'm just gonna let this already be everything I'm going to say about the speaker. It is, at the end of the day, a TV speaker. It's good, it's loud enough for TV shows, for YouTube videos and such, but you wouldn't buy a TV, especially the 65-inch version, or even the 75-inch version, but not even this 55-inch one, and use it for movies. Because if you want to get immersed like you can on this one, especially in the dark, on such a great display, you also want the same kind of immersion also for your sound. So that's just about that. The next thing that I want to cover is the remote. It's nice and narrow, which is good, and all the buttons have a distinctive shape, at least for all the sections. They can easily be used also in the darkness. But at least for this price, I would have still wished for some sort of backlit keys. It would make things easier. Other than that though, it works out nice, it feels good in the hand, it doesn't feel cheap at all. It reacts very fast, it has a good reception point, so it reacts very well. And let's actually already get into the menus. And two main menus that you will use. So practically the first one is the action menu. And you can see it's quite responsive. So this is called action menu. This gives you the quickest access to the most often accessed things. Info, there is actually an info button directly where you can access that, and the remote already has most functionality already built in with just one button. There is a Netflix button, Google Play button, but also audio options, home, and all this. So the remote control does a really good job. Now info, picture in picture, I'm not going into that because it has been a gimmick 20 years ago and it's still, I don't think many people will use this more often, so not going into that. Picture off, turns the picture off. I'm not quite sure what that is all about. Now, let's get actually quickly back real quick about the TV so we can show off football again, because this is just something that I want to mention when it comes to the live football mode. Leave it off. That's my best tip, because what it does, I could actually show this real quick. It boosts the colors and everything looks more pleasing. And if you have things very close, it looks nice, but you will just see way too many artifacts, the ball looks weird, way too many errors, and even though it looks nice at first, the experience wasn't great. So I would just say, as you can see the ball, nah, leave it off, and that's the best way you can use it. Now let's get further in about the live picture mode. Picture I will go into a little bit later in the settings, sound as well. Speakers, here you can choose if you want to use it with the speakers of the TV or of your own system, and sync menu would allow you to use one remote for different kind of devices. But other than that, that's the action menu. Let's go to the home menu. Quickly cover that because this will take up quite a while. This is the main menu with the big apps, the ones you use the most often. Here are some featured apps. Then also your own apps. And at first I thought, how can I rearrange those? It's working already on its own quite smartly, because the more frequent, the more often you use an app, the further it is at the top. That works good. You have games. Inputs, which is something that doesn't make so much sense for me, because there is an input button that gives you direct access to the input. So this kind of wasn't necessary. Here we have the main settings for Wi-Fi, timers, and help. But this is something that I want to cover. If you don't care, you can just skip this part because it will take up quite a while. Channel setup. I can't really say anything about that since I don't have a satellite dish anymore that I use, because I didn't even have HD. So I'm completely off of streaming services, on of YouTube and so on. So unfortunately, I can't say much about that. Now, external inputs. This is actually important, at least one thing. Manage inputs. You can hide inputs and such. Bravia Sync, customized TV key is where the TV key is. And I will keep this a little bit short because otherwise this video will just explode in terms of length. But just don't forget this option. HDMI signal format. Standard, yeah, and enhance. And as you have seen, what enhance does is displays highest quality HDMI signal on HDMI input 2 and 3. So my mistake at first was using 1, and I think that's a little bit of a weird decision, because you need 2 or 3 if you have a source that has 4K 60p with 420 10-bit or 444 422. This is very important later on for the PC, but it will also be for consoles. So just keep that in mind, and I will show you later on what it does. Other than that, the display, you can change the aspect ratio and such, and expert settings, which only contains actually pretty much one important feature, pixel shift. Since this is an OLED and OLED still can burn in, there is this technology used like pixel shift, where static elements on the display slightly shift around the pixel here and there, so it won't burn in as much. So it should prolong the display not to burn in that fast. And picture, this will take up the most time now because there is so much here. Picture modes. I'm not gonna show all of these, but there are tons. There are graphics, sports that I wouldn't use because it pretty much does what the TV mode uses, and that's something that I personally would say just keep it off. And I want to actually quickly change the video so you don't watch the whole time the same thing. So let's get back, and this is done quite quickly. There's a first delay if you enter it, but other than that, you can see the different modes. Use them wisely. At least there is an auto picture mode that I wouldn't use at all, because you should decide what's right. Like I said, brightness is turned down to 18, so it's not too bright here for the video, and it works from 50 to 0 in 1 point steps. Same for the color. Light sensor as well. No, color actually works in both directions. Light sensor, if you wanna have the TV control the brightness depending on your living room situations, you can use that. I personally don't like this so much. Here it starts, and I will try to run through a little bit, not to make it too long. Brightness, contrast works from 0 to 100, gamma, black level, black adjust, advanced contrast enhancer. Like I said, use those features wisely, because out of the box with all enhancements pretty much turned off, the picture is very natural and already looks stunning. So you don't need to use them unless you want some extra things, but they tend to come with the compromise of making the picture a little bit more artificial. Extended dynamic range will change anyways if you maybe use HDR sources. Color temperature is available. You can set whatever you want to. Advanced color temperature. As you can see, if you want to completely nerd out and get it as accurate to any standard you want, you can do that, even though I don't think a TV has to be. Live color adds some saturation. You could use off, which is very natural, but low, a little bit saturation we most like, especially on a TV, it's very nice to see. There is also medium and high. For clarity, now one article I read is the first thing that you should do if you buy a 4K TV, turn the sharpness down to 0. I think that's stupid, because 50 is right. Of course, if you have 4K, you don't need some extra enhancements, but most people, at least on a general base, still have mostly 1080p sources or even 720p and 4K on occasion. And 50 on sharpness, no matter on what kind of content you use, never looks too much, because if you would boost it up to 100, of course, you would get false conscious, like double conscious and such, and that is too much. But 50, with reality creation leaving at manual and resolution at 10, like it is by default, it looks stunning. Sure, some minor tweaking you can do, but I would personally leave it as it is, and the rest is available depending on the source. Smooth gradation. This is something you should keep in mind later on for the gaming part. I will mention that for HDR content, because there is off, low, medium, and high. What this means, I will tell you later on. Now motion. My stand on motion flow is leave it off. That's the first thing that I always do on any TV, because if you have a 24 frames source and you want 50 or 60 frames, where do those frames come from? It's just an artificial enhancement. I don't like it. It's maybe okay for sports to get it smoother, maybe okay for if you want on a TV show the soap opera effect. My stand is not to use it, but if you want to, sure. HDR mode, and especially video range and color space, is something very important, like I said, about the PC, because let's actually get to that. Let me quickly go out of this, because we pretty much covered the picture now. So let's get back. Let's actually turn this off or pause this. Now, as you can see now, if I move the mouse, you can see quite some flickering going on. As you can see, sometimes it happens. As you can see, this flickering. Now, if we go back into the action menu, or actually this is in the home menu, and you go to the settings, to the external inputs, signal format, and use enhanced. This is very important, because you even hear something going on the PC, and it is very important, because if you use this, the flickering is gone. It's completely gone. Because there is a trick, what I've read on Google, that if you can just turn off or turn on mouse trails, set it to short, the flickering is gone, but it's just a temporary solution. The only right solution is using the enhanced HDMI input, not just because of that, but also if you go into your graphics card settings, RGB mode 442, 444, 422 and 402, and the dynamic range will be grayed out. You can't use them. So that's why you have to definitely think of that feature and use HDMI too. Now, the next thing, let's go into sound, and then we are mostly already through the boring part. Sound, clear audio is available, some extra settings, but like I said, maybe, just maybe, try to just use an external system. It doesn't have to be something like this, but there are definitely better solutions. And this is not everything. And like I said, something at some point will go wrong. But usually we have some more options under sound. yeah, speakers, audio priority, Bluetooth if you want to use it for headphones and stuff, this is all available. But since I already was, let me actually just pause this video for a moment. Just so it won't go too far. Let's go to the home, back. In terms of apps, I want to quickly cover this, not to make this too long. Let me actually check how long this already is. Yeah, we have to keep it down. Netflix. It takes about 30 seconds to switch from 720 to 1080 and about 10 additional to switch to 4K. The app works really nice. It's very easy to use. It's nicely done. Like I said, I don't want to go into it, but of course you could go to the home. And switch usually is actually quite fast, as you have seen. I don't want to spend too much time on that. The app works really great. You get all your access. What doesn't work so great is the Amazon Prime app. It looks very rudimentary. It doesn't really seem to do what it should be. So I'm not that happy about that. And smart TV capabilities are there. You can download apps and such. But I would say still, I think you are better off with an external box, maybe with a Roku or something like that. I can't really judge it so much. I haven't actually used any of these since I use my PC all the time, which is actually what I want to switch off to and talk about gaming, because I think gaming is very important for many after all, and that's why I just want to start off a few demos here. Even though I'm also gonna say one thing, I did play games as good as I could with 4K, but my 970 in here isn't quite made for that, so I was a little bit limited. So these are just a few demos as a placeholder for me to be able to explain things. The first most important part for many people is the delay. That's why you should be like I am already for the PC in general anyways in gaming mode, which turns off most enhancements. Because the more enhancements you use, the longer the delay gets, and you will notice this if you move your mouse cursor, but also if you have inputs for your games. And I can tell you from my experience that this is about as good as on a normal monitor that just has 60 frames, so not a gaming monitor. The delay was very small, I couldn't measure it, but it felt very natural, and I was just about as good as I was on a proper monitor. Since I can't say too much more about it, I can just say it's a TV. You will mostly use it with consoles. And for an Xbox, for a PlayStation, this is just fine. And if you play on something as big as this, you mostly play for the experience. And this is just something that I quickly want to go into. On this one, with HDR, and I mentioned this with smooth gradation, if you have here a very one pattern size, with HDR turned on, at least on F1 2017 it was the case, I had a lot of steps with HDR turned on. With smooth gradation on high, I got rid of most of these steps and just had like 2 or 3 steps left. If you turn off, it's gone. So this could be either due to my graphics card, due to my settings, or due to the game developer not maybe having optimized it. I can't really say too much about that. On consoles, it could not be a thing at all. So that's just something I can't say too much about it. But the delay is good enough for any console. It also works for shooters. Of course, it's always a thing if you want maybe 144 Hz refresh rate or 1 millisecond response time. This is not what you will play on. That's for hardcore gamers, and those will these. But if you want a great experience with amazing visual effects, with great brightness and all, you will get this on this TV without any doubts. Absolutely amazing. The next thing that's maybe important is like kind of tearing with VSync on. It wasn't an issue, and also kind of smearing or ghosting. Also not really noticeable from my side. It all turned out quite fine. I was happy. The gaming experience, I have to say, is spectacular. Because what I did is I played F1, I played, for example, Metro and a few other games. 4K looks amazingly sharp, detailed, 60 frames if you can push that, which I really couldn't do all that well. Absolutely great, yeah. I didn't really see any ghosting, delays. So from my standpoint, from what I can say right now, having not used a Samsung or an LG, this gets my complete approval. Gaming experience was absolutely top. And especially with HDR games, once they are properly maybe optimized, which on F1 at least wasn't the case, you should get an amazing experience. But talking about amazing experience, what I can also already tell you, you are maybe concerned a little bit about the panel's qualities themselves, which you shouldn't be on a flagship level display. But here's what I can judge the best, my own videos. If I make my own YouTube videos, I have seen those on laptops, on calibrated ones, on monitors, on TVs, on a projector. I've seen on many, many phones. So that's what I know what it should look like the best. But before that, real quick. Of course, 360 and 480p doesn't look really all that impressive just due to the resolution. We are far off from 4K. But starting already at 720p, if you have a good bitrate, the picture looks great. 1080p with an even better bitrate looks amazing. And once we go to 4K, it looks fantastic. Actually, mind-blowing good in some ways. And I had a few colleagues who also had 4K 65-inch TVs. And what they tell me, they don't see a difference between 4K and 1080p. Well, I definitely see one. And it's actually not that much just about the sharpness, but also due to the higher bitrate. The picture is cleaner. It's a little bit more contoured, more contrasts are usually better with HDR especially as well, and the picture looks better. It just looks so much cleaner, more natural, just way more immersive, since if you have artifacts going on, or if you have some noise, which you will see on 4K actually a little bit more sometimes, because the higher the resolution is, the easier it is to pick up noise. So you will see that after all, but I can tell you, I was super impressed. And what you have maybe seen real quick on my own, this is what I've noticed, at least on the PC. PC by default is actually calibrated a little bit too dark, and you don't see that so much, and a few details get lost. For example, when I watched Netflix on 4K, that was amazing due to having OLED and pitch perfect blacks. The gradation between gray and dark and all those elements, you could see all details perfectly. I've really listened, or I really watched that meticulously to see that. It's on the PC right now, as you can see here, maybe not perfect. That's something that I would have to fine tune if this would be my own device, but I was super impressed. I was happy with that, and I actually have to say my own video, I liked it here more than I usually like it on my monitors and so on, because it's a glossy display. Glossy displays have some kind of extra vibrancy, some extra touch to it. But now I want to focus actually on the real qualities, and I want to get into the first thing. What I only saw though on the setup. There was a lime-colored screen, and when I watched it from a certain angle, I saw the vertical banding that people talk about when they talk about OLEDs. Because you don't see a smooth gradation in the lime, but you see steps, a few, like maybe 12, 15 in general, in total. Don't bother about this. People who maybe see this to be an issue, I would tell you, just are looking for something to complain about what they shouldn't. In normal use, I never saw it, no matter on what kind of things and such. So you are totally fine in that regard. Don't concern about that. The next thing, white. If you have something completely white, there is a little bit of some uniformity issues, because here on this part, like about this white, it is a little bit more yellow. Here it's a little bit more blue. And the best white is around in the middle. Should you bother about it? I think not so much, because where I mostly saw it is in the browser, where pretty much everything is just white, but in normal TVs, this little bit of shift could also be dependent on the panel, is not something you should bother about. I would say that's a non-concern, but it's there. Black, of course, is, like I said, pitch black, and you have all these different kind of shades, smooth gradation. Looks amazing. Colors look impressive. They look very natural. Of course, you can fine tune it if you want it more realistic, more natural. Turn off, like I did, pretty much most enhancement. If you want to do, just check if the picture doesn't maybe just look more impressive at first, but also a little bit more unnatural. So this is definitely something that you should have in mind. The next thing, overall experience. Let's actually already get to the summary, and then I will maybe be able to get it done in under half an hour. So, design, I like it, absolutely, no matter if on the wall or on the bottom. Speakers, I would say, let's just forget them. They work, but yeah, I would have these if I would use that. Otherwise, the remote works out just fine. It would have been nice to have it backlit. The smart app functionality is good, especially for Netflix. I would use it. YouTube also works nice. We also have voice search, so if you just press it and tell it open YouTube app or search for a specific video, that works just fine. So I don't really want to cover that to not make this video any longer, but YouTube worked fine. 4K. On the info button, for example, you see what kind of source you usually have. I would wish for a little bit more information sometimes here, but it's okay. What else? The menus, you get tons of options, especially for the sound and even more so for the picture. You get every little option to adjust the picture the way you want it. But I think that's actually the highlight. You don't really have to. I changed brightness, I changed the color temperature, I turned off the enhancements with the game mode, and everything was perfect. I could maybe do some slight adjustments for the PC, but on Netflix and such it looked absolutely great. Of course, like I said, since this is an OLED, you have to keep in mind if you have the window on your side not to reflect too much, and it's just not as bright no matter what as an LCD, but that's just something I can judge later on. For gaming, especially on consoles, the experience was absolutely top. I enjoyed it a lot because it was playable without any issues, without any compromises, and it looked just way better. Once I've played a game on this one, I just couldn't think going back to just a normal 32, 25-inch monitor. It's just not the same. And even so for movies, because movies look spectacular. It's so amazing to watch this. And this is why I wanted to start with the flagship. Now I can properly have seen this with the experience, evaluate of how much of an experience you get for way less money. So I don't want to make this artificially shorter, but that's what I have to say. I'm completely impressed. If I could think of some things that are not perfect, maybe, like I said, the white uniformity, the vertical banding isn't an issue. On HDR, at least on my case, with the steps in the sky, which is also just a thing of if you have just one color space. If you have clouds in the sky and you already don't see that. The reflections are a thing, but due to reflection, since this is glossy, just also looks more impressive. It's not cheap. I will let you know if there are competitors are maybe worth it because of the price, but I think so far, having not judged the competition yet, this is pretty much as good as it can get, because it's actually quite easy to get a halfway decently flawless panel done. And actually Sony uses LG as well, but I'll get to that in a second. But what is maybe even more harder is to get a device where all the non-flaws are also amazing, which is the case here, because we don't have anything that we really compromise on, and everything that we have is in the best possible, most impressive way done. And that is, you could say, with the LG panel also available on LG devices. Well, I'm not quite so sure about that, because from what I've read, Sony seems to have the best image processing or the video processing, and that is super important. Because, for example, LG, all their 2017 panels, from what I got, use the same panel, and Sony, for example, uses also an LG panel. But it really comes down to, even with all the enhancements being turned off, that you have a clean signal processing, you have good calibration out of the box, and that all these things are done well in the system. Because you could have the exact same panel on two TVs, but the image processing chip and the way that the software programmed it can make a huge impact on that. And I want to definitely try an LG so I can kind of narrow down how much of a difference that is. But until then, I won't be able to tell it. But from what I've heard, Sony seems to do the best job. And from what I can just see, objectively, I don't see issues here. So I think they did a great job. So it totally gets my recommendation. If you want pretty much the best, this is the one to go for. But in case you are still hesitant, maybe watch out for a few future reviews, and then I can tell you if you maybe should just get something a little bit cheaper and you don't really sacrifice too much. So this TLDR, pretty much unbeatable. I don't see anything. The only thing that I'm personally concerned is a little bit maybe on the long term about the dimming, if the screen would over years dim, which I don't think will be the case, and also burning. But that's really absolutely the only part. Absolutely impressed by it. I loved having used it for about 4 weeks. Absolutely impressive experience. And that's where I'm going to leave it. I hope you liked the review. If I have overdone something, please let me know in the comments and I can maybe change this for future reviews. But like I said, I think if you are willing to spend so much money, you need all that kind of information. And I got it done in under 30 minutes. So I'm very happy about that. And I will just stop this and I wish you a good time for the next time. Okay, until next time. Bye.